Welcome to Books Under Your Bed. My name is Wesley McCraw. I'm an indie author, and recently I read a book of short stories by Jorge Borges. It's called Ficciones, Fictions in English. It's a collection of stories of his from 1940s. He's from Argentina. A lot of his writing inspired magical realism. He's a very influential writer. Today I wanted to highlight one of his short stories and some works of fiction and a video game that I feel are connected to his writing. He influenced all sorts of works, but these are the ones that I experienced recently that remind me of his writing. The book of short stories has quite a few stories that I feel are a little bit of a struggle to get through, but other ones are sort of mind-blowing and wonderful. So one of them that really stands out is the Library of Babylon. The Library of Babylon is less of a story about a character and more of a story about an idea, sort of like a lot of science fiction around that time. There's writers who were more interested in the ideas that they were coming up with than like a character or a story. The story itself is about a world that's only a library, an infinite library with infinite floors going in all directions and an infinite number of books. But all of the books seem to be pretty much just gibberish because it's a random assortment of letters. But the thing is, in the library, the books never repeat. So theoretically, every permutation of these books exists if you can just find it. So that has all sorts of implications. Like every story that could ever be written in those books would exist somewhere on the shelves if you could find it. You could find a book that describes your own life or what's going to happen in the future or the key to escaping the library or whatever. And so humanity or the society that exists in this library has all sorts of feelings about existing there. And the story sort of extrapolates what kind of religions or philosophies would be born from being surrounded by books that you can't understand. What makes the story super great is that you start to realize that real life is very similar to the Library of Babylon. We're surrounded by things that we can't really understand, that seem kind of random, but we still look at those things and try to see evidence of God or reason within the chaos. So now that you've heard about this one story from Ficciones, I'd like to move on to Piranesi. Piranesi is a pretty famous, at this point, fantasy novel. It's very highly regarded. I really liked it. The concept is that there's this mansion that's endless, and in the mansion there's statues and rooms, and in every direction the mansion goes on forever. And it's about this character who's keeping a journal of exploring this mansion. I won't get too far into the plot, but he starts to unravel the mystery of where the mansion is and how he got trapped there. One thing about this book is that it's kind of a mystery box where it feels like the whole point is the mystery and the reveal of why this mansion exists. And I felt a little bit underwhelmed by the answers to these questions, but it's still a wonderful book that's worth reading. Obviously, you can see the connection to Borges and his library. The next book I wanted to talk about is one that I read very recently, and I read it in a day. It's a novella, much more horror than anything that I've talked about so far. It's called Coup de Grâce, or no, Coup de Grâce. I'll have the cover so that you can see who wrote it. I had mixed feelings about parts of this book, but the idea is that there's this gay character who has decided to kill themselves and throw themselves into a river, and they get onto a subway station to get to the river. And when they wake up, they're in this liminal space that's like a metro station, endless, that goes on forever, with sort of strange architecture, and they're searching for a way out. And so you sort of know that like it has something to do with they probably committed suicide and are stuck in this space. There's even a moment in this book that mentions the Library of Babylon. So this place is like the Library of Babylon, only without books, is how it's described. I won't ruin the ending, but the ending is really what sold me on this book. The prose themselves throughout most of it are maybe a little bit too poetic to the point of being a little bit impenetrable at times. It often feels like it'd be nice if something was described more directly, just because it feels a little bit unrealistic that a narrator or that the narrator would speak or think in the way that this book is written. But the poetry is still interesting and does give an effect for the novel. But near the end, it drops sort of this poeticness and becomes a little bit more direct and playful. And I definitely liked its experimentation near the end. And I completely understand if not everyone likes it, because it's definitely challenging the way that a normal novel is written. But it is a novella, so it's not a huge time commitment, and I think it really worked for me. The final thing I wanted to talk about is a game that I recently played called Blueprints. Blueprints is a puzzle game where you're creating this mansion, and whenever you get to a door, you get to select from 3 rooms. Some of the rooms don't have exits, so they can create dead ends. And as you sort of create the mansion yourself, as you're going through the rooms, a mystery is being unraveled, and puzzles are distributed between all of the rooms. You'll run out of steps or run out of time and have to build the puzzle over again. So, really, there's an infinite amount of versions of the mansion, and every time you rebuild the mansion, you'll start to see more and more connections between the rooms, and it just very much feels like an expansion of Borges' ideas of branching labyrinths and timelines and unraveling of reality. So those are my connections to Borges, and all of these I would recommend. So give some of these a try if you like mind-bending puzzles or thought-provoking fiction. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Thank you for spending your time with me. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. Uh, Thanks again. I will speak to you soon.